being here to honor all of our veterans on their day, Veterans Day. Veterans young and old, those missing and those deceased, all swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to obey the orders of the President of the United States. And they did. And they continue to do so to this very day. Because of these oaths and the actions and sacrifices that follow, we remain a nation that enjoys the freedoms that are laid out in that Constitution. It is for this reason we are here to honor all of those veterans. As the saying goes, freedom is never free. Veterans, we salute you. Would everybody please stand as you are able, and you can pledge your allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation by Chaplain Benner.
Almighty God, bless thee and protect our nation. Be merciful to our honored dead. The memory of those who verify their courage and heroism inspire us to I need to get my glasses noble action and to eternal vigilance in the preservation of our priceless liberty and of our lenient rights to enduring happiness. Guide and direct our minds to a thorough understanding of our duties to you, to our country, and to one another. Awaken in our hearts and desire the will to accomplish the ideals for which this nation exists, so that out of our determination and endeavor they may emerge a better world. A world founded upon faith and understanding, a world dedicated to preserving an individual rights and dignity of man, a world of tolerance and justice, a world intent on loving and serving you, our Lord and Master. Amen.
Amen.
Please remain standing for one more moment. World War I was known as the Great War. It shook the nations of the world for 4 years, claiming 20 million lives. It was also known as the war to end all wars. We know it did not. So let us take a moment of silence now in honor of the service and sacrifice of veterans of all wars throughout the history of this great nation. Thank you. You can be seated at this time. A glimpse back into World War I time. That vision was prompted by a packet of letters and newspaper articles that was delivered to the museum. Those letters and articles told the story of a young man named Martin G. Haugsy. If you've been reading the newspaper, Garrett, everybody should be reading the newspaper, right? If you have, you know a thing or two about Martin G. Haugsy and his service and sacrifice in World War I. For those one or two that haven't read the newspaper, it's no problem. But you do have some catching up to do, so you'll have to pay close attention. But don't worry, we're going to tell Martin's whole story. With that, let me set the scene and we will get started. We're going to turn off the lights here in a minute, but when the lights come up on our play, it will be the summer of 1918. And we will be in Asbjorn and Ingeleif Haugsy's parlor in Garretson, South Dakota. Asbjorn and Ingeleif are Martin's parents. We'll turn off some lights here now, and then I'll give you some brief history to get us to this location. Asbjorn N. Haugsy was born November 28, 1873, in Ullensvang, Hardanger, Norway. In 1892, at the age of 19, he came to America and settled in Garretson, South Dakota. On July 26, 1896, he married Ingalief Aga. Osborne and Ingalief went on to have 4 children. The oldest of the 4 died at the age of 2. The second oldest was Martin G. Haugsy, who was born on November 7, 1898. Daughters Inga and son Johnny followed in 1902 and 1906 respectively. Martin Haugsy was a fine boy. He grew up in Garretson, and like most kids of that time, he had many friends and they entertained themselves with games and playing sports. Martin especially enjoyed baseball. He attended school in Garretson, where he was a good student and athlete. He also was active in the band, and in 1907 was elected band secretary-treasurer. Martin also assisted his father as a plasterer and cement worker, and for some time worked as a clerk at the Wanksness store. When the United States first entered the war, Martin was very anxious to enlist, as he wished to take part in the great struggle. However, on account of his youth, his parents tried to dissuade him. But when the company was being organized at Laverne, Martin received the consent of his parents to enlist. He went over there with a bunch of Garretson boys on the evening of June 10th, 1917, and enlisted in A Company of the 2nd Minnesota National Guards. That was later changed to the 136th U.S. Infantry. At this time, Martin was 18 years old. The company was called out July 18th and drilled at Laverne until September 27th. Then they started for Camp Cody at Deming, New Mexico. From that time until June 1918, they drilled in the sands of New Mexico, and Martin was always on the job, doing his share of the work and drill without thought of complaint. He was universally liked by both his officers and his fellow soldiers, and he was one of the best drilled soldiers in the company. Those days after Martin's departure found Asbjorn and Ingalief longing for and anxious to hear from their eldest son.
Asbjorn, what are you pondering about?
Oh, Ingalief, I'm just thinking about Martin. It's been quite some time since we've heard from him. I know he's busy with training, but I'd love to know what he's doing and how things were going.
Maybe this will cheer you up. It's just what you've been waiting for.
Ingalief, you read it to me. I'm too excited to read it.
Kansas, June 17, 1918. Dear folks, now while we are on the train and have got lots of time, we'll try and write a few lines, although it is pretty hard writing. We left Camp Cody Sunday morning the 16th at 10 o'clock, and now Monday, 6 o'clock, we are at Hutchinson, Kansas. Our whole company or regiment did not leave Cody. They took so many privates out of each company, out of the Garretson bunch. Harry S., Eddie J., Alan A., and Pink S. are left at Cody, and we sure hated to leave them behind. Maybe you read in the papers how the governors of Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska went to Washington, D.C. to see if they could not keep their troops from being split up. but we are glad they were split up or any old way just to get out of Cody. When we left yesterday, it was nothing like when we left home last fall, although the captain felt pretty bad about it and had a few tears in his eyes, but the soldiers all said, "You lucky devils, we'll be with you someday." When we got to El Paso yesterday, the Red Cross met us at the old depot and gave us cards and lots, and last fall they gave us coffee and sandwiches. From El Paso, we went north through New Mexico and woke up this morning at Dalhart, Texas, where we started to see a few crops, but now we see them all over, and I feel like myself again. To tell the truth, I never did feel like myself down there in the desert of New Mexico, or as we called it, the hell on earth. I don't see how the people can stand it down there all the time, but these green trees and crops sure make me feel fine. We are now pulling out of Hutchinson, and we sure got cheered there, but we do all along the line. Wish we could pass close enough to home so you could see me, but we're not allowed to telegraph ahead or tell the people where we are from or where we are going. But I'll tell the world I'm going home someday. We will pass through Topeka sometime tonight or in the morning, and I think we will go through Kansas City. Well, folks, as it is pretty rough riding and warm, I'll close hoping you are feeling as good as I am. From Martin. If you cannot read this letter, don't blame me as the cars are swinging back and forth and onward.
Oh, that makes me so much feel so much better. It's good to hear from him. I can almost see him riding on that train.
Oh, me too. It is nice people are cheering him along the way. I wish they were coming here.
Two months have passed, and Martin's regiment has been sent across as replacement troops to fill vacancies caused by casualties in the armies that were already on the other side. They arrived in France July 16th and were started at once for the front line, arriving there on the 21st of the same month. Martin and most of the men from the old 136th were placed in the 165th Infantry, a part of the famous Rainbow Division.
As warned, we've received another letter from our dear Martin.
Dear folks, I will now try and write a few lines to let you know that I am feeling fine and happy, hoping you are the same. At least we'll take it that way, as the last letter I received from home was when I was at Camp Merritt. I suppose John and Inga have started school this time of year that the letter reaches home. I imagine John has been on the farm all summer and is nearly as big as I am now. Have you heard from any of the boys down south lately? I wish Inga would write Alan, Harry, and Eddie and greet them from me, give them my address. Maybe Harry was up there this summer as he expected to get a furlough. Is Clarence still in the store, or has he found the Navy as he told me he was going to do? The regiment I'm in now is an old New York regiment, and mostly Irish fellows, but they are a nice bunch. Well, folks, I'll now close, hoping to hear from you someday in the future. With love, your son, Martin Hougsey. Oh, it's so good that he's fine and happy.
We will have to have Inga write the boys right away. It was so good to see Harry when he was home.
It was. I wish Martin could have gotten a furlough to come home, though.
Oh, me too. Martin is right about how Johnny is growing.
Martin sure doesn't say much about what he's doing or how things are going.
Aswarn, you know he wouldn't want us to worry. And besides, they probably don't let them write things like that.
2 more months have passed since Martin's last letter home. Asbjorn and Ingleaf, who had already lost an infant child, are devastated by yet another tragic event, the loss of their 12-year-old son, Johnny. Johnny had been working in the country and was taken sick with the Spanish influenza. Asbjorn and Ingeleif had been diligently taking care of Johnny for a couple of days, but called in a nurse when things started to deteriorate. The nurse did everything in her power, but nothing could save him. While still struggling with the recent tragedy, Asbjorn and Ingeleif receive a letter from Martin.
Somewhere in France, October 13th, 1918. Dear folks, I will now try and write a few lines to let you know that I am feeling fine, hoping you are the same. Received Inga's letters of the 9th and 20th, and it sure made me feel good to receive mail from home. The last letter I received on France was from Laura Kay, mailed July 1 and addressed to Camp Merritt. I have not had time to answer it yet, so you greet her from me and tell her and the rest of my friends to write. Also Clarence and Rudd. Passed through a French village the other night where Joe Lucy and Martin Halderson were, but did not get to see them, but talked to a few fellows from Sioux Falls. We would like to be home so I could have some of the tomato preserves Ma is making, but just save some for me. It is all right with me if Inga uses my horn, but I wish you would take up something different. If you use it, please take care of it and ask Melvin W. how to take care of the valves and pull out the slides. I'm enclosing a slip so you can send me a box of sweets for Christmas, and don't send anything that will spoil. As there is not much news, I will close now. With love, from Martin Housey.
Oh, Ingeleif. When Martin was writing this letter, our Johnny was still alive. He probably doesn't even know of his brother's death yet. It's good to hear from him, but not even that's making me feel good right now.
Martin will be so sad when he hears the news of his brother dying. I must get a package sent. I will include some of my tomato preserves, so he will at least have a little taste of home.
I sure hope this war is over soon so our Martin can come home.
The war was indeed over soon. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. It has now been several months since Asbjorn and Ingeleif received their last letter from Martin. There are rumors and reports of Martin being injured and other rumors of him being captured by the Germans. Asbjorn and Ingeleif are still distraught about the loss of Johnny and fearing that something has happened to Martin, as he has always been very prompt about writing. It is the evening of March 18th, 1919.
Ingeleif, I can't take all of this. My heart is breaking.
Oh, Asbjorn, I do not know what to tell you.
2 of our children have been taken from us, and now we've not heard from Martin for months.
Asbjorn, I know it is not like Martin not to write, but we have to stay strong and believe that he is okay.
I know, but it's so hard. It's a telegraph from the Adjutant General in Washington. It is with regrets that we inform you that your son, Private Martin G. Hogsey, was killed in action on October 15th, 1918. Ingeleif, our son is dead.
Shortly thereafter, the Hogseys receive a letter from the governor of South Dakota.
21st, 1919. To the party addressed. The enclosed memorial certificate is presented to you as the nearest of kin of one of South Dakota's boys who so willingly went forth into the Great War struggle and who will never return. It is sent to you with full appreciation of the debt humanity and civilization owe to those whose lives were sacrificed in the great cause. And you may be assured that even as the highest peaks of earth are first lighted by the splendorous sun, thus also will the memory of these boys be first illumined and unceasingly rekindled by the gratitude of a state and nation. With assurance of my regard, I am sincerely yours, Peter Norbeck, Governor.
Around this same time, members of the American Expeditionary Force were convening in Paris to discuss what would eventually become the American Legion. The organization was founded in the summer of 1919 and began publishing a periodical called the American Legion Weekly.
Asbjorn, you're pondering again. What's on your mind?
I just can't stop thinking about Martin. I need to know what happened. I need to know of his final days and hours. I need to know where he is.
Well, you are not going to learn anything just sitting at this desk and thinking about it. You know, some of Martin's buddies from the service have been talking about the American Legion. Maybe you could get in touch with them and ask about Martin.
That's a great idea. I'm going to do that right away.
Lo and behold, in the November 21st, 1919 edition of the American Legion Weekly, Asbjorn's request is printed in the Find Your Buddies section. We do not know the details of how the information in the request was obtained, but the entry went as follows. C Company, 165th Infantry. Private Martin G. Haugsey, automatic rifle gunner of C Company, 165th Infantry, was killed at his gun in the 42nd Division attack on St. George's Farm and Hill 263 in the Argonne on October 15, 1918. Private Haugsey was reported to be holding a position in company with the other members of the gun team, Privates Manny Crosby, Joseph A. Mullen, and Andrew Hogstrom. Crosby was acting as the loader. When Haugsey was hit, the fire ceased long enough to permit a party of Germans to rush the gun. Mullen and Hogstrom were captured and now are reported to have returned to their homes in the States. Crosby escaped. A.N. Haugsey of Garretson, South Dakota, father of the deceased gunner, would like to hear from any of the above-named men or from anyone else who recalls the above incident, and from Sergeant Peter Keller, New York City, who is also in Haugsey's company. In the following month, Asbjorn receives replies from 4 of the young men who served with Martin at the time of his death.
November 28, 1919. Mr. A.N. Haugsey, Garretson. Dear Sir, in looking through the American Legion Weekly today, I came across the article relating to your son's death on October 15, 1918. I was an observer with the 3rd Battalion of the 165th Infantry, and having witnessed the above incident which resulted in the death of your son, from my observation post in Côte de Chatillon, but was powerless to do anything more than phone headquarters, as our observation post was attacked almost at the same time.
It's the fortunes of war. I can certainly feel sorry for your loss, but your son died bravely and performed his duty until the last. Respectfully yours, E.B. Bartley, Trinidad, Colorado.
Letter written from A.F. Riley, December 1st, 1919. Dear Sir, I have just received the issue of the American Legion Weekly for this week and noticed your letter inquiring about your son. I am very sorry that I cannot locate or give you the addresses of the men who were with Martin when he was killed, but I will try to give you some notes from our October 15th from my diary. We went into battle October 14th and advanced about 3 miles when we were held up outside the Langries St. George by German machine gunners. This was about 4 o'clock, so we were ordered to dig in until 8 p.m. Then we again tried to take St. George. This time we got into the town, but on account of our heavy losses and the good positions held by the Germans, we were forced to withdraw to our previous position, where we again dug in and tried to steal a little much-needed rest till morning. We were woke up by Captain Boots, who I believe stayed up all night watching over his boys, as he called us. There is one thing, Mr. Haugsey, our company had one of the best and bravest leaders on the line, and that was Captain Boots. Well, October 5th, we again started to take St. George, and as soon as we were up on our feet and heading towards Germany, the Huns started in with their machine guns. Up to now, I still wonder how we ever advanced through those thousands of bullets that were flying past. Well, we went about 1 mile when we reached a sunken road and again were held up by the Germans. This place is where we lost all our best men. Your son was with Haudstrom and Mullen, and the rest of the gun crew was put at one end of the road to hold the Germans, who were almost surrounded us. We held here for a few hours, but the Germans had our range and was reducing our ranks very fast. All our ammunition was gone, and our own artillery was falling short and hitting us. So we had only one thing left for us to do, and that was try to get back to our old lines. The Huns were waiting for this, and they sure did get us. I was hit in the leg and a piece in my hand. Martin and his crew stayed to cover us. Of all the heroes, those boys who stayed there were real heroes. The Germans were on 3 sides of us, and as soon as the Huns saw us trying to get back, they closed in on the road. But the crew kept firing and held the Germans till we got to our new position. We could hear that one gun spitting lead into the Germans who had them surrounded. They were heroes, and they held the Germans till their last bullet was gone. Even then, they didn't surrender. They fought with their bayonets. That was the last we knew of the boys who gave their lives so the rest of us might live. I went to a hospital and lost connection with the company. Langries St. George lay in a valley, and the Germans had fine position all around the hills surrounding the town. It was an old-time fort. Martin came to us like a man, fought like a man, and died like a man. He was loved by all, and we felt very bad when we heard word that he was killed. But some of us had to go. So, Mr. Haugsey, we sure feel sorry for you on account of your great loss, but always remember, Martin was a real hero and died like a man. Now, Mr. Haugsey, if there's anything else you want, just let me know, and I will do anything you want. I will close hoping to hear from you, your friend Archie F. Riley, Brockway Boulevard, Jamaica, Long Island, New York.
December 19th, 1919. Dear Sir, seeing your piece in the American Legion magazine, I will tell you what I know about it. He was my buddy in the Army. I sure thought a good deal of him, and when he got killed, he called to me twice, and both times I tried to get to him, but somebody would pull me back. He didn't suffer very much, but died most instantly. We were on St. George's Farm and Hill 263 in the Argonne Front on October 15, 1918. If there is anything more I can tell you, I will be glad to do so. I remain Manny M. Crosby, 131 South Edward Street, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
December 22nd, 1919. Dear Sir, I am writing you this letter in response to your request for information in regard to your son's death. It was only this morning that the article in the American Legion Weekly was called to my attention, or you would have heard from me before. On the morning of October 15th, our battalion was ordered forward, and without any artillery preparation. We crossed hill number 263 and continued forward in the direction of Landres St. George. My automatic rifle squad having been wiped out the night before, I requested that a gunner and 2 ammunition carriers from the 3rd platoon be assigned to me. And Sergeant Keller sent your son and 2 carriers named Crosby and Adam to me. We continued forward until we reached the crossroad about 500 yards in front of St. George. We then received orders to halt and entrenched ourselves temporarily as our forces had suffered great losses. My platoon, the 4th, held the crossroad and received a terrific fire from the German machine gunners in town, and their artillery fire fell right into our midst. After about 6 or 7 hours at this crossroad, the sergeant in charge of our platoon sent a messenger to the company headquarters about 300 yards to the right with a request for more men and ammunition, as they were about 9 men left in our 5 rounds of ammunition per man. But the messenger came limping back and informed us that he had been hit from the rear and that we were surrounded. We then decided to try, if possible, to make our ammunition last until dark, and then try and break through and join the rest of our company. But the Germans continued to close in on us and finally succeeded in planting a machine gun on the road that we were on. It was then that your son and 4 others were killed, and the platoon sergeant and myself wounded. There were but 3 left who were capable of fighting. Corporal Holstrom and myself continued to fire on them, and Private Crosby gave first aid to Sergeant Chloe. Then the final charge was made. We were made prisoners and helped carry Sergeant Chloe to the German first aid station, where he died that night. This was the last that I saw of your son. And when I rejoined my company upon release from the German prison camp, I was informed that he had been buried where he fell. The feeling of sorrow which I know you must experience from the loss of your dear one should be tempered with a feeling of pride in knowing that he was such a great American, an excellent soldier, and a hero who asked for nothing better than to defend his country, even at the expense of his own life, which he gave so willingly. I, who knew him but for a few short hours, would speak well of him, as each moment that I lay alongside of him and gave him instructions, I realized all the more what a willing and faithful soldier he was. Hoping that this or any other information that I may be able to supply to you will help to relieve your aching heart, and assuring you that any communication that you may address me will receive my full attention. I am very sincerely, Joseph A. Mullen, formerly Corporal, Captain's Company C, 165th Infantry.
Martin truly was a hero.
We should be so proud of him. He gave up his life for our country and to protect his friends in the Great War.
I'm so grateful for this information from these wonderful young men. Martin was lucky to have been with such a great group of guys. They are heroes too. And Martin, he's still there, buried where he died, somewhere on a hillside in France.
5 months slowly pass.
Ashbourne, we've received another letter from the War Department.
War Department, Office of the Quartermaster General, Graves Registration Service, Washington, D.C., dated May 25th, 1920. To Mr. Ashbourne N. Hougsey, Garretson, South Dakota. Case of Private Martin G. Hougsey, number 1426641, Company C, 165th Infantry. Place of burial, grave number 19, Section 57, Plot 1, Argonne American Cemetery, number 1232, Romaine Sos, Montefaucon, Moose. Number 1, it would be likely to involve further delay if we should write personal letters in each of the many cases of notification of relatives as to the present resting places of their noble dead who glorify the nation's roll of honor. Number 2, will you therefore please accept this letter as being the best we can do just now? And will you also accept sympathy of those who have been working hard for many months to render worthy service to tens of thousands of soaring people in the care of their dead? Number 3, many delays in notification have resulted from our ignorance of proper addresses, shortage of clerical personnel, incomplete and imperfect information, or non-delivery and return of former letters. Number 4, thousands of bodies have been transferred to larger and better cemeteries for reasons which were deemed imperative by the military authorities of all the Allied nations. And the great task of improving these cemeteries is well underway. The most diligent care has been exercised to ensure accuracy, and this immense project is being carried through as an unquestionable service to the friends of our dead. Number 5, in serving you and others, we have been hampered by conditions and consequences of such a war as we hope may never involve our country again. By authority of the Quartermaster General, Charles C. Pierce, Colonel, Quartermaster Corps, Chief, Graves Registration Service.
We now know where our Martin is. He is in an American cemetery.
We must get him home. Martin needs to be here at home. Remember, Martin said, "I'll tell the world I'm going home someday."
We do not know the details of Martin's journey home, but we know sometime later, on a Friday evening, he did arrive. The funeral was held on a Sunday at 2:30 p.m. at the Lutheran Church with Reverend T.A. Mason presiding. He comforted the bereaved, taking as his text, "Greater love have no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." John 15, verse 13. He spoke of the fine qualities of Martin as a boy, a youth, and a young man. He also spoke of the sacrifice of the parents. The church was beautifully decorated with flowers from many, including a flag made of flowers from the American Legion. The American Legion quartet sang, and the honor guard provided their services. At the conclusion of the service at the church, the procession was again formed and proceeded to the cemetery east of town. The ex-servicemen marched to the cemetery. Headed by the Garretson band. The pallbearers were intimate friends of Martin, also ex-servicemen. Martin was laid to rest by the side of his friend and comrade, Perry Wanksness, on the lot dedicated to the remains of the young men who gave their lives for their country in the awful World War. In addition to Martin and Perry, the young men from Garretson who made the ultimate sacrifice were Henry G. Fix, Bernard Heggie, E. Stickley, R. Ingleson, Henry Solvig, and Arthur Erickson. God rest their souls.
Our Martin is finally home.
Yes, our Martin is finally home.
Well, that's our program for the evening. I'd like to have our cast come out and